and welcome once again, ladies and gentlemen, to a brand new edition of The Save Point. I am your host, Joker.
I am your co-host, Shepherd.
My man, how have you been?
I have been very well, my good friend. The sun is beaming. My curtains are closed, but I can't see it. I've had my coffee, so I'm absolutely wired. I am, and we're talking about something really special today. I'm hyped. I'm so ready to go.
This video has been a while coming. It's been a while coming, and it's a franchise for me that is so special. It kind of shaped my gaming experience as a child, and up into my teens, up now coming into my 30s. I cannot speak highly enough about it. One of the fondest memories I actually do have of the game was watching my father play it way back in the day. I was very, very young when I watched him playing this game, but I was so mesmerized by the sprites, the colors, and what really stuck out to me at that time was actually the music. And I had previously made a point in one of the earlier videos on our channel about how the music shaped me as a musician. It was like my blueprint almost. It was embedded into me that although I may have not understood the story or what was going on with the characters and the journey that they were on at such a young age when I first got into the game and witnessed it, it was the music that I always remembered. And even coming into when I was 9-10 years old, I would be humming Aerith's theme. I would be humming Tifa's theme, or sometimes I go you know, from such an early age it was built in, and it's iconic. It's a series that's iconic.
Yeah, well, I think a testament to its iconography is the fact that I didn't play Final Fantasy VII until possibly 15-20 years after it came out, and it was the first Final Fantasy game I finished. I had played others before that. I started with Final Fantasy X too. Rented it on a weekend, and I was like, I don't know what the flying fuck is going on here. Went back and played Final Fantasy X, played a good bit of that, but didn't finish it. And then I eventually started on 7, and it was like, what? This is amazing. Oh man, this is like scratching that JRPG itch. You know what I mean? Like, it's so. Then the story, everything, it gripped me.
And isn't it funny now that with a new generation of fans, that their introduction to this franchise is the remake?
Indeed. It's an interesting time to be getting into it, because remake straddles an interesting line between being a new jumping off point for new fans while also subverting expectations of old fans. I think it did that really well. We
will get into the remake itself, which is more of the meat of the video, I suppose. And I remember actually playing the demo and almost live streaming my reaction to you. And it broke me, like legitimately. It really broke me, in the sense that it was like I was watching my dad play it again from his version, seeing it how he would have seen it from the first, when it was released back in 97. It broke me. It absolutely broke me. I loved it. And it wasn't that long of a demo, in fairness. It was the bombing mission from Final Fantasy VII, the opening part of that game, where you meet with Cloud, Barrett, Biggs, Wedge, and Jesse. You are going to detonate one of the Mako reactors in one of the sectors in Midgar. But it broke me. Legitimately, I was playing it and I was so upset, in a good way, because I was like, there's people who I've known who have passed away, who we have shared a love of this franchise, and I was like, they should be here. They should be seeing this. But we'll get into that.
I will say one thing on the demo as well. In the build up to the release of the demo, you and I obviously were talking about it, and we were both apprehensive. We had seen gameplay, we'd seen trailers and all that, and we were just like, still seems like there's something missing or something not right about it.
It seems too good to be true.
Yeah, it's like the graphics are great, the sound design seems great, the characters look amazing. What's wrong? And then we got our hands on the demo. And as you said, you basically live streamed your reaction to me. I hadn't played it yet. So when you did that to me, I was like, oh, okay, there's something more here. So when I eventually played the demo myself, I was like, oh my God, this is... I'm ready for what's to come now. I honestly, give it to me, hook it to my veins.
I don't even know where it's going to go.
It's great. I love not knowing.
I love it. I love the fact that it's like, how is this going to play out? Now we will get into that, of course.
Absolutely.
The remake is literally a remake, and we'll get into the meat of that video once we get in there. But I suppose talking about Final Fantasy VII just as a title, this title has just, it's accelerated over expectations that I didn't think was possible. For a game that was a one-off, literally a one-off title, there are now 7 additions to this one game. And a lot of the actual additions do kind of tie in with each other, albeit they are quite original in how they are handled and how the story goes. There are overlapping characters and themes, of course. The music is still there, even with new additions coming in, still sounds very familiar, very welcoming. It kind of caresses the nostalgia vibes of what the original brought. And it, once again, going back to the remake, my God, was I happy to see Nobuo Uematsu come back and pass the torch down and come back for this. It was brilliant having the original composer come in and almost revamp the themes that are so noticeable, like Aerith's theme, Tifa's theme, what goes on in the background when certain events are happening. It's like, yeah, it's that's the theme, but it works for a new generation. I think that if, just going on the music here, I think that if it was like copy and paste, it'd be kind of, yeah, it's been done before. It still sounds very MIDI, still sounds very computerized, but it's been refreshed. There's a revamp to it. It's beautiful. I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it.
It's full orchestra, isn't it? It's like, you know, that great Final Fantasy VII battle theme, like it's like, oh man, that's cool. Like, it gets you going for a fight, and then there's this like slap in the face when you hear it for the first time in the remake. It's absolutely immaculate to hear for the first time. You're like, whoa, they took like, the music and they like transcended what came before.
It's like, I'm home.
Yeah,
I'm home.
It's kind of like, it's kind of like that thing where you play a game from the 90s, like a PS1, N64, Lara Croft, blocky boobs kind of game. And when you're a kid playing that, it's like, oh my God, this is the most realistic thing I've ever seen.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's like you imagine so much more than what's actually on display.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that, I think that was true of the original Final Fantasy VII. I didn't play it when it came out, but I could still get that feeling when I played it. And then the remake takes what you thought you saw and made it real.
Yeah, it's I'm pretty happy that they went with art style over graphic fidelity for that time.
Yes.
Because even though it was done back in the 90s, what I really feel that the designers kind of etched themselves in with this concrete art style is you could put it on now in 2021 and it's still like, yeah, that was the art style at the time, and still to this day it's so accessible and it looks bloody brilliant.
Yeah, the pre-rendered backgrounds really helped in the original, because obviously there was so much attention to detail.
Yeah,
you know, the backgrounds were filled with so much that you could just like you could nearly dive into it.
Yeah,
and it felt like a real world.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And you know, I think that's where the strength really lies in that art style and the story and the compositional brilliance. That, like, Nobuo Uematsu, he's my favorite video game composer and probably my favorite composer of all time, just because his melodies have etched themselves into my life. This is why I became so obsessed as a musician, like madly obsessed, that it needs to sound a certain way. It needs to tell a story through the notes that you're hearing. I became so enveloped in that mindset. It's maddening. But when you're able to depict a story or a vibe or an aesthetic simply just through music and compositional brilliance, it's mind-blowing what you can achieve. Mind-blowing. So the original Final Fantasy VII, it's timeless. But in terms of where this review / retrospective / discussion is really going to stem from, we need to go back to where it all began, lore-wise, timeline-wise, because it can jump all over the place. And this is something that I really appreciate about how they handled a massive, broad storyline like Final Fantasy VII. Even though there was different developers, writers, designers, and character development writers coming in at different points in this long franchise, I still think that despite all this, with 7 entries in and a full-length CGI movie, they managed to tell a cohesive and consistent storyline throughout all of the titles, irrespective of your opinions on Crisis Core, before Crisis, during Crisis, which is the animated series, the animated movie that came out. Then we have the original, Dirge of Cerberus. We've got the remake. There's so much going on here, and it's a lot to take in. But I'll try and make it as easy as possible for our viewers to kind of grasp. There may be titles that you haven't touched upon or know about. I'll do my sincere best to make it as approachable as possible. So, canonically, the whole thing starts with Crisis Core, and our main character is a guy by the name of Zack Fair. He is a soldier, a second-class soldier in the Shinra Electric Power Company, and he's very much an honorable kind of character. He has a very strong belief system in his friends. He's a very, very trustworthy kind of person. Now, Zack has been kind of taken under the wing. Very good choice of words there, I will say. Thank you, Joker. He has been taken under the wing of a guy called Angeal Hewley. Now, Angeal is a first-class soldier, and there are only a select few members of Soldier who get to graduate to this upper echelon of combat brilliance. In Crisis Core, there are 3 main figures who shape destiny around them, and this just amplifies and accelerates where the actual franchise goes. So I'm going to name them for you now. So as I said, we have Angeal Hewley, the original owner of the Buster Sword, which Cloud Strife ends up acquiring. So Angeal Hewley looks after Zack. He sees Zack as and this is a quote in the game, he sees Zack as the cute puppy dog. Zack is so like, yeah, are we going to go on to this mission? Yeah, let's go, come on. Are we going to go and do this? Okay, let's go. And Angeal is like, you have to slow down. Trust me on this. You have to slow down.
So he's kind of a guiding figure for him. He's
essentially, yeah. He's been in the Shinra Electric Power Company for the last 20 years. And in the actual game itself, it was a PSP exclusive. But you do spend a lot of time with Angeal, and he is kind of your mentor, your guiding force. Yeah. He's the wise elder Jedi who guides you in the right direction. And he always says to Zack is, protect your dreams, protect your honor as soldier. Protect your honor. So Zack takes that literally. He will protect his honor. He will do what's right. He's a very joyous character, and that's been embedded in him from Angeal. So Angeal Hewley is one of the 3 characters in First Class Soldier. The second character we have is a guy by the name of Sephiroth Crescent, who is Sephiroth. There's no ham and cheese, emo hair, lemon tea. Sephiroth, he is the main villain, anti-hero, and antagonist of the entire series. Now, what I really liked about what they did with Crisis Core is they portrayed him as this war hero, and he knows he's a war hero, but he's very he's very well written. Like he says, it wasn't just me, it was my comrades. He doesn't take all of the victory.
Yeah.
Some ways he doesn't want to be seen as this heroic image, which is what the propaganda posters dotted around the place in Shinra portray themselves as if you could be anybody, be Sephiroth. And Sephiroth doesn't like that. It's like,
he's not in it for the fame, he's not in it for the glory.
He's in it for the honor, which is a theme in Crisis Core, which is amplified so much just by this trio. And the last member of this trio in Soldier First Class is a man by the name of Genesis Rhapsodus. He's kind of like the black sheep of Shinra, and his presence is gigantic in Crisis Core, so much so that he comes across as much more of a villain than what Sephiroth could ever achieve to be. Now, the thing about the three of these guys is, because they're in Soldier First Class, which, as I mentioned, is the upper echelon of the Shinra combat unit. So, to make it a little bit more easier to understand, in the Shinra army, you have infantrymen, you have Soldier Third Class, Soldier Second Class, and Soldier First Class. So, when you are being enlisted into the Shinra army, immediately you're an infantryman. And the only way you can kind of climb the ladder is by making a name for yourself, being sent off on missions, doing very heroic things, making the Shinra company appear like this is the place I want to work. This is the place I want to make a career for myself. But there is stuff going on in the background that you're not really told about it straight away. But there are events and objectives being written by the people in command. Now, I've mentioned Angeal, Sephiroth, and Genesis. The three of those guys were sent over all corners of Gaia to kind of represent the Shinra Electric Power Company as the place to work and as a place to build a life, build a career. I just want to make it clear that during this timeline of Crisis Core, this is set maybe 4 or 5 years beforehand, before the events of the original Final Fantasy VII.
So right, okay.
It's a prologue, but
yeah,
your main character is Zack Fair, and as I said, he is Soldier Second Class, so he's just about to get there. He's right smack bang in the middle, and Angeal is always kind of putting in a good word for Zack in front of the main director of the combat unit of Shinra. His name is Lazard. Lazard is the director of Shinra, working directly underneath President Shinra. And Angeal is kind of always saying, whenever you're interacting with Lazard will say to Zack, you know, I've been hearing good things about you. Have you ever considered going for first class, or are you happy where you are? You know, because Angeal is putting in a great word for you, and I'll take his word because he's Soldier First Class. And Zack would be like, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I want to get there. I'll do whatever I can. I'd love to be there. So Angeal is literally, he's like the Obi-Wan Kenobi to Luke Skywalker. He's trying to pull out the natural talent that Zack has. Now, years and years and years before the events of Crisis Core, there were two main scientists who worked in Shinra.
Okay.
One of them was called Professor Hojo.
I know Hojo.
Right?
Yeah.
So he's like the mad scientist of Shinra. And the other guy who was working alongside Hojo was a doctor/professor by the name of Dr. Hollander. Now, this is where two projects came out. One of them was called Project S, and the other was called Project G. So Project S was spearheaded by Hojo, and Project G was spearheaded by Hollander. And what that means is Project S literally stands for Project Sephiroth.
Makes sense.
Now, what that means is thousands of years before Final Fantasy VII, before Crisis Core, basically before the whole franchise kicked off, this calamity in the form of a meteor fell from the skies of greater space and crash landed into Gaia, which is the world of Final Fantasy VII. The planet is called Gaia. Something crawled out of this meteor and became a threat to the natural habitats of Gaia. The natural habitats of Gaia were called the Cetra, or the Ancients. They were the first people on the planet. this being that had crawled out of this meteorite was almost like a symbiote before it started to take form, a very humanistic type of form. This species was called Genova. Now, Genova literally wiped the planet clean. Wiped it clean, purged the earth completely.
I'm Genova.
Until she went into hyperstasis, a slumber, in the North Canyon, which is a region of Gaia way, way to the north. You cannot reach it without getting there by an airship. There's no possible way of getting here. It fell into a slumber for about 500, 600, 700 years. And archaeologists who worked in the Shinra company found this being and brought it back to Shinra, believing that Genova was the last remaining ancient, believing Genova was the last remaining Cetra. But unbeknownst to them, Genova had wiped out the Cetra and the ancients. So they believed we found the last remaining godlike being. Imagine the secrets this could tell us. Imagine the power this could give us. Or imagine the power it could give our army. They kept Genova in this slumber, this stasis. But she's aware of what's going on, but Genova can't get out of this canister she's in. She's being kept in there. Now, the scientists of Shinra had noticed that Genova's cells, so to speak, could accelerate another living being's tissue by 200%, meaning Genova's cells could give somebody immaculate power. So the two main scientists who came into fruition, as I said, were Hojo and Hollander. And Hojo said, well, we have this ancient being in here, and I'm noticing that when we examined her cell tissue and her blood and hemoglobin, that this could be of a benefit to us. So he brought his theory to President Shinra at the time and said, well, why don't we inject our soldiers with these cells? And it will show the world the power of the Shinra company, that this is what we can do. Come work with us. You'll be a god. You'll be a pure warrior.
Oh, it works for me.
Well, this is it, and this is what happened. So Project S, spearheaded by Professor Hojo, he had injected his lover / lab assistant with these Genova cells. We'll get into this woman's name later on. But she gave birth to this child whose name was Sephiroth. And Hojo had come to the realization of, it worked. It worked. Now we can go and start rationing out.
That army. Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly.
The super soldier program.
This was it. It's arguably the same kind of program of the Les Enfants Terribles project.
Literally what entered my head. I was like, man, I'm getting serious, like Solid Snake vibes here. You know, you got Big Boss, greatest soldier in the world. Oh man, we got to make the most out of that guy. Let's clone him, make more super soldiers. And
exactly.
Yeah, but obviously Sephiroth kind of he had alien steroids.
Well, this is it, and he was only told by Hojo, like Sephiroth was brought up in the Shinra company. He lived there, and Sephiroth would usually say, "Where's my mother?" And Hojo would be like, "Your mother's name is Genova. That's all you need to know.
Yeah,
she's
Genova."
And Sephiroth was like, "Oh, so my mother, is she here?" And Hojo would be like, "No, she died giving birth to you."
Oh, Hojo.
Yeah.
Dick.
There's so much to Hojo's machinations. I mean, my God, we'll get into it. Now, as I said, the second project, which was spearheaded by the other scientist, Hollander, was called Project G. Now, Project G stands for so basically they needed a host for this almost in utero birth.
Yeah.
And Project G stands for Project Jillian. And it's kind of like, who's Jillian?
Yeah, I was like, not Genova?
Not
No?
Genova.
Ooh,
Project
plot
Jillian
thickens.
was named after Gillian Hewley, Angeal's mother.
Oh, snap.
So now
Oh,
we have,
no.
yeah, now we have Project S, spearheaded by Hojo,
Yeah,
and Project G, spearheaded by Hollander. Gillian Hewley was an employee at Shinra, and
of course.
of course, and she gave herself to this experiment. She was kind of brainwashed to believing that if you do this, you're going to help our company. You're going to save the world, essentially, and she did. Gillian gave birth to her son Angeal. Now, unbeknownst to Angeal, he doesn't know that he actually has Genova cells in him, which were passed down from his mother. She was injected with Genova cells, and he doesn't know this. But there's one other person who's been injected with these Genova cells through Project G, and it's Genesis.
Oh,
So
shit.
we have Angeal and Genesis on the Project G side, and we have
Yeah.
Sephiroth on the Project S side. So the main difference between Project G and Project S is in Project G, anybody who goes through that stage of fertilization and is born from this fertilization process, immediately they start to degenerate very rapidly. And it's something that Crisis Core shows as the game progresses and as things unravel. You start to see that Angeal, even though he has kind of black hair, he starts to go gray. His skin starts sagging. It looks like there's cracked paint up his arms. Like he's starting to like succumb to this. So basically, Genesis finds this out and leaves Shinra. He's like, you fucking assholes, you lied to me. You lied to me all along. I've given my servitude to this company. I've portrayed you as the leaders of Gaia, and this is, you kept this from me. I'm out. I'm done. And he defects.
Yeah,
So
understandable.
a lot of Crisis Core is based around Zack joining Angeal and Sephiroth on their journeys to hunt Genesis down. Genesis is starting to cause a ruckus all over Gaia, and so he would burn an entire village down and say, Shinra caused this. Shinra told me to do it.
Damn, son.
Yeah, just to get.
Genesis got no chill.
He's no chill whatsoever. No chill.
No chill.
Now to kind of go ahead a little bit in the storyline here, because we do have other entries to talk about, of course. Angeal defects against Shinra as well. Once he meets up with Genesis in Wutai, I think it is.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so it's one of these places that's very far removed from the mainland coastline of Gaia. It's a very distant kind of country in Gaia itself. He meets Genesis there, and Genesis is telling him, this is how we were born, man. Like, we're dying, and the company that we've put so much time and love and blood, sweat and tears and they betrayed us, we're dying. Do you not understand what's going on here? And Angeal is like, yeah, but we're soldier. We have to stay true to our honor, true to the company that gave us this creed. And Genesis is like, you're following a creed that the company gave you, but they're killing you. Do you not understand what's going on? So it's around this time that Sephiroth takes Zack under his wing, now that he sees that Angeal has gone off and defected essentially against Shinra. The place that kind of the place that kind of set everything off is a place called Benora, and Hollander is originally from Benora, but what's quite interesting is Angeal and Genesis were born there, and they grew up as childhood friends in Benora. So Sephiroth pulled Zack across and says, "This is in the Shinra headquarters." He says to Zack, "If you were your mentor and you just defected, where would you go?" And Zack is like, I don't know. hasn't Angeal been all over the world? There must be a favorite place of his. And Sephiroth is like, no, 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 you're thinking like a soldier. Think as a human. Where would you go? And Zack is like, oh, I'd go back to my hometown and try to rekindle my humanity there, maybe. Sephiroth is like, that's exactly where he is. That's exactly where he is. He goes on a gut hunch, Sephiroth, and says, Zack, you're coming with me. We're going to save Angeal. We're going to bring him back. We might be able to reverse his conditioning. Zack ends up in Benora because Genesis had been sighted around this area, so Shinra are effectively hunting him down.
Yeah.
Zack ends up going to Angeal's home, and he meets Jillian, and she's sitting in her kitchen, and right next to Jillian is the Buster Sword. And Zack says he's here, isn't he? Because Angeal always had the Buster Sword with him. It was his family's weapon. And
Yeah.
Jillian looks up and she says, I can't find my boy.
Oh.
And Zack he's like, I'm trying to bring him home. Don't worry. I just need to know where he is. And Jillian is like, she's very, she kind of has a shawl over her head, almost like in mourning, that effectively it was her participation in this experiment that made her son say, no, fuck your weapon, fuck our heritage, I'm out of here, I'm done. My own mother lied to me, my own company, my own livelihood lied to me, I'm done. So Zack is like, I just need help. I know he's here. He that sword didn't come here out of thin air. He dropped it off here. And she kind of tells him he said he was going to this area and whatever. So Zack and Sephiroth go to the area where Angeal was supposedly sighted along with Genesis. Genesis appears and he's reading this book called Loveless, which is exactly...
Loveless. I know Loveless.
That's
I'm
it.
familiar.
That's it.
I suppose actually I want to clarify before you go on. Sorry, I don't think I stated this at the beginning of the video. I've never played Crisis Core. My familiarity extends to simply the original game and the remake. So that's why Owen has been kindly dropping bombs, and well, I'm free. My reactions are genuine because this is all new shit to me. Sorry to interrupt. Continue.
You know, I'm trying to do as best I can with what you do with the Legacy of Kain series, but I don't think I'll even be able to do as good as a job as you did. So Genesis is obsessed with this book called Loveless, and it's basically the story. It's broken into 3 acts, and it's basically the story of a hero who is the chosen one, learns that he's been lied to, deserts his entire background, his heritage, goes off on this journey to be enlightened, and comes back in the 3rd act as the reborn hero. This is what Genesis, he's always reading a passage from it. He's obsessed with this book because he kind of sees it as like a looking glass into his life. He's obsessed with it, and he sees Zack and Sephiroth coming towards him, and immediately he looks to Sephiroth and says, Act 5, passage number 4, and so the hero's best friend wanted to kill him, or something along those lines.
Yeah.
It's more Shakespearean than what I can
It's
say.
It's essentially him saying is like, yeah, you're right on time for this prediction of my life.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And Sephiroth he's kind of putting his hand out to Zack, stopping him from getting close to Genesis. He's kind of looking at Zack saying, you're still a puppy. You're not going to be able to take him. Like, Sephiroth can barely take him at this stage of the franchise.
What?
Yeah.
Sephiroth's like the guy who can shatter dimensions and throw planets at you.
Well, that's it. This is it. Like, in Crisis Core, it's still he's much more kind of human. He doesn't the only time that Sephiroth really becomes like that overpowered level 99 anti-hero is when he starts to finally unravel the truth of his birth and kind of opens up the hidden abilities that were in him. When
he's a true extension of Genova, I suppose. Yeah,
you nailed it on the head, Shepard. Exactly. So he's still very much human at this point. He still has those strong morals of, like, prove your honor to me as soldier. This is what he's been brought up in. You could see it as like Shinra has indoctrinated him a little bit, that this is the reason you exist. Genesis looks towards Zack and says, "Ah, so you're his puppy dog," talking about Angeal. And Genesis then looks towards Sephiroth and back towards Zack and says, "Such a shame about Miss Gillian Hewley, isn't it?" And Sephiroth is like, "What? No." He says to Zack, "Get back to the village. Check on her." Zack bolts after her. The door is wide open. Zack enters and he sees Gillian dead on the floor.
Damn it.
The Buster Sword is missing.
No. Son of a bitch.
Zack is like, "Oh no, don't tell me." He leaves the house and Angeal is standing there with white hair. He's degrading because of the Project G.
Yes, yeah, of course.
And he's holding the Buster Sword and there's blood dripping from it. And Zack is like, "You monster. You killed her." And Zack is like, "I was told I was born an angel, but angels aren't monsters." And out of nowhere, he sprouts a white wing. His own wing. Now, that's an important thing. So with Project S and Project G, the three similarities that the three members of First Class Soldier, Sephiroth, Angeal, and Genesis, all of them can sprout these singular wings. It's kind of like a character trait that they have because of the Genova infusions. The only difference is that Project S was much more successful than Project G. So Sephiroth isn't degrading, although he has that ashen hair. He was born with ashen hair. It didn't change or anything. So Angeal flies off and Zack is like, "Oh God, he swore he would never harm a loved one or anyone innocent. He's after killing his mother." It's like, oh crap. Zack gets a message on his phone from Lazard, and Lazard says, "We have, after receiving the news about what's going on, Sephiroth had gotten in contact with Shinra about Angeal and Genesis."
Yeah.
Lazard says, "We cannot have Shinra involved in this. It's going to look really bad for us. We're sending in a chopper and we're bombing the village."
What?
Yeah. So it's actually a really kind of sad cutscene where you have Zack boarding the chopper that's being driven by Reno, one of the Turks.
Yeah.
And
Reno.
As Zack looks out, he sees from it like the choppers flying off and bombs are being dropped onto this peaceful village that has never seen war, and they're wiped out by this power electric company because they didn't want to be seen as having a statement on that village. And it's like, God damn. And Zack is looking out the window, and what Benora are very famous for are their apples. They're purple apples, and they're called dumb apples because, oh, you're dumb, you're purple, you should be green or red. That's where they got their name from. And it's actually pretty funny because in the remake of Final Fantasy VII, you can see posters dotted around train stations saying, "Have you had your Benora apple today?"
Brilliant.
Zack looks out and he sees an orchard going up in flames, and it's like, whoa. So a lot of kind of other nibbly bits kind of go on that aren't really important to the point, but Zack is pursuing Angeal in a later part of the game. This broke me. This really got me. He pursues Angeal, and Angeal is like, "I no longer want to live as a monster. I have wings, but I'm not an angel."
Oh no.
And his degradation takes full form, and he becomes almost this behemoth type of animal. It actually would remind you of what Tyrell looks like.
Oh.
In the Legacy of King Defiance, that dog-like creature, but his armor is infused onto his body. It becomes a boss fight basically, and Zack is like, I can't do it. I don't want to fight you, Angeal. I can't do it. And
God damn it.
Angeal is screaming at Zack like, kill me, because Angeal is such an honorable character. He doesn't want to live as a monster. He'd rather die by his own.
Man.
Exactly. He'd rather die by his own reasons. And Zack, like, it's actually a pretty good gameplay mechanic because when you're playing the game, the controller will stop, and Zack will be holding his head, and he was like, "Please stop." Now, prior to that encounter with it's field central up in here. Prior to that encounter, Sephiroth and Zack are told that Genesis is on one of the upper plates of Midgar. So it's the way Midgar is designed is you have 7 sectors, and then underneath the 7 sectors you have the slums. So it's kind of like a giant floating pizza almost, and underneath this pizza you have the slums. It's the best way I can describe it, and it is described like that in the original game, which I always found very funny. So Zack and Sephiroth are chasing Genesis through one of the sectors. Genesis absolutely beats the living daylights out of Zack, nearly killing him, and Zack falls off one of the sector plates, crashes all the way through a church, and lands in this flower bed. And the screen goes black, and you hear, "Hello, hello." And Zack opens his eyes, and he sees this figure looking down at him, and this figure is like, "You fell all the way from the clouds. Are you an angel?" And Zack looks up.
Slow your rolls. This sounds very familiar. What? Okay, continue.
So this figure is looking down at Zack, and he's looking up, and he's like, "Oh man, this is the best feeling I've ever had." He's lying in these flowers. He's like, "Oh, this is so soft. I'm in flowers." And he jumps up. And a 16-year-old Aerith is looking at him, and she's like, "Hello, you fell all the way. I was wondering, are you okay?" And Zack is like, "Oh my god, I'm so sorry. I'm after destroying your flowers."
Oh god, so pure.
He goes to the flower bed and he starts like making sure they're all straight, and he's like, "Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry." And Aerith is like, "Oh, don't worry. This is the only place in Midgar that they grow from," which is like what she said to Cloud when they first meet.
Can't be dealing. Oh.
And Zack is like, "Wow, have you ever thought about selling these?" And Aerith is like, well, no, I've never thought about that. And Zack is like, "Okay, here's what we're going to do. I'm going to build you a wheelbarrow, and we're going to start a new mission. It's called Wallet Full of Money, Barrel Full of Flowers." And it's literally, that's the name of the mission. You go around with Aerith to the Sector 5 slums, selling flowers for 1 gil to people there. And Zack is like, "Wow, we're after really getting a lot of gil here. Oh, I'm kind of tired." And Aerith goes, "Oh, there's this playground that I know nearby. Maybe we can go there and kind of chill out." And Zack is like, "Yeah, okay." And that's a direct link to the original game. When you and Aerith, when Cloud and Aerith go to this playground in the original, and the remake, this is the same place that Aerith took Zack as kind of like a first date almost.
And Cloud getting sloppy seconds.
Well, this is it, man. You know what I mean? You know what I mean? And Aerith is like, she's staring at Zack's eyes, and Zack every now and then kind of catches her glimpse, and she's like, "Why are your eyes so bright?" And he says, "Oh, I'm a soldier in the Shinra company." And Aerith is like, "Oh, so what do they do?" And he says, "Well, when we're brought into soldier, we're injected with Mako, which is the life force around the planet, which gives us better health, better speed. And one of the outcomes is their eyes go brighter, which is why Zack has these piercing blue eyes." And Aerith is like, she's never seen this before. She's like, "I could look at your eyes all day." And Zack is like, "Well, thank you. I appreciate that." He's kind of awkward. And he says, "Well, why don't I take you home, make sure you get home safe, and then I'll meet you again tomorrow." And Aerith is like, "Oh, so it's like a date?" And Zack is like, "Yeah, absolutely. And we need to, fill the slums with flowers, So, I know.
My heart, dude. No. Oh.
It's wholesome. It's wholesome.
Yeah.
Oh,
man. Fuck Final Fantasy VII, man. Making me care and shit.
It gets. But wait, hold my beer. So, going back to what I was talking about there. So one of the places that Zack goes to, where he's sent to, is a place called Modeoheim. Now, what I really do appreciate about what Crisis Core did, they really opened up more of the regions in Gaia. Now, I know that in Final Fantasy VII, the original game, the world opens up slowly as you explore it and things like that. Coming out of Midgar, going to Calm, going to Junon, going to Cosmo Canyon, places like that. Like the world opens up slowly as you explore it. You know, what I really did appreciate about what Crisis Core did was they expanded on an already lived-in world while adding in places that you've only heard about in passing.
Ah, clever.
Do you know what I mean? So, for example, in let's say in the original Final Fantasy VII for the PlayStation 1, which you are familiar with, one of the places that you can read about in passing is a place called Modeoheim, where it once was a key point in the Shinra Power Company's strategic placements of Mako reactors. But you never visit there. But in this game, you do go and visit there because Lazard, who is the director of Shinra at this time, had called Zack in and said, "We found Genesis. He's in this place called Modeoheim. Sephiroth is gonna accompany you, but you'll be with another infantryman, and we're kind of looking at him to be a candidate for soldier, but he's still a little wet behind the ears." And Zack is like, "Okay, cool. So I'm gonna be his boss then." And Lazard is like, "Well, yeah, you can be his boss, but like, take it a bit easy on the kid. He's only 15." And Zack's like, "Great, okay, let's go." So being all optimistic and shit.
Do I know who that is?
You might know.
I think I know who that is.
So when they get to Modeoheim, their transport vehicle gets trapped in the snow, and Zack gets out of the vehicle, and the infantryman follows him, and Zack is like, "Oh my god, I hate waiting around for all these repairs. Why can't we just go and get this over with? Like, come on, there's a whole world out there we all need to see." And the infantryman is like, "Well, I've never been outside my hometown, so I'm kind of nervous." And Zack is like, "Oh, really? Where are you from?" And the infantryman is like, "I'm from Nibelheim." And Zack is like, "Oh, Nibelheim, cool. I'm from Gongaga, which we could have been neighbors." And the infantryman is like, "Yeah," he's kind of shy. "I guess so. It's my first time outside my village, and I don't know what to expect." And Zack is like, "Well, listen, if you prove your honor to me, and if you prove you can be a soldier, I swear I will put a good word in for you. I promise I'll do that for you. What's your name?" The infantryman takes his helmet off. "I'm Cloud." And Zack is like, "Cloud, nice to meet you, man." So they enter Modeoheim. Sephiroth has learned where Genesis is. And he says to Zack, "Take you and the rookie, go after Angeal. Do whatever you can to restrain him and bring him back to Shinra. We cannot lose the soldier first class. We cannot lose him." And Zack is like, "Oh, I have to fight my mentor. Hopefully not." He turns to Cloud and says, "I need you to do me a favor. I need you to have my back on this." And Cloud is like, "But I've never been in a fight before." And Zack is like, "Just listen to your instinct and go with what you were taught on basic training. I promise you'll make it out of this." And they have that moment where they're just looking at each other. And Cloud says, "Okay, I'll do what you tell me to." They get to where Angeal is, as I mentioned just before, the meeting of Aerith and things like that. And Angeal turns into this behemoth kind of creature with armor and all this kind of stuff, and he's screaming out at Zack, kill me now." And Zack is like, "I can't do it. Don't force me to do this." And it's funny, anytime that Angeal is shouting this at you, when you try to do something on the controller, it won't let you. It's quite similar to when in the end of Metal Gear Solid 1 for the PlayStation 1, when you're fighting Metal Gear Rex and Frank Yeager comes down and you're given that option with the Stinger missile to either take, you know what I mean, to either take out.
I can't do it. I'll hit him too.
That's exactly what Zack is doing at this point, you know. And Angeal finally, to make Zack react, he slices Cloud down and Cloud falls unconscious. And Zack is like, no. It's now taken on that Zack is now the mentor for Cloud, much like that what Angeal was to Zack.
Yeah.
So Zack kills Angeal, and it's that moment when his his behemoth like armor disintegrates into the clouds,
Yeah.
and it's Angeal lying on his back with the Buster Sword on his chest, and he's looking up at Zack, and his eyes are bleeding and his mouth is bleeding and all this kind of thing, and he holds up the sword to Zack, shaking. He holds the sword up, and he says, "I could not have been more proud of you." And Zack is looking down, and he's like, "Don't do this. I need to get you back. Don't do this." And Angeal says, "I know what we have to do. You will be my living legacy," and hands the blade to Zack.
No pressure.
No pressure. Now, this broke me as a first-time player. This absolutely destroyed me. Zack goes to the church, Aerith's church, like 2 days later.
Yeah.
The scene stops after he kills Angeal, and it cuts 2 days later, and Aerith is like, she's talking to Zack, but she's like looking at the flower, but she has her back to him, and she's like,
Yeah.
"Oh, I wonder if I can grow any different types of flowers here, because the last ones were such a big hit, and maybe like, she's so innocent, like maybe people might want something different." And you can't see Zack in this, but she has her back to him and he has her back to her, and in the background while she's talking you can hear, and Aerith is still talking like, "Oh, like maybe I could open the floorboards here and grow some more." And as she's talking, this noise kind of gets a little bit louder in volume, and the camera pans to Zack, and he's hugging his knees with tears running down his face. And then the camera pans to Aerith, and she's saying nothing. She's just like, she doesn't know. She doesn't know. She hasn't a clue what happened.
Yeah, of course.
And she runs to Zack and literally puts her arms around him, his shoulders, and he's crying his eyes out. He's killed his brother, his father figure. And the next day, this is where Zack becomes the leader.
Yeah.
And he like, in the game itself, it's something so simple as this, but his hair is quite long down to his shoulder, down to his jaw. The next day he slicks it all the way back, which is his iconic hairstyle, holding the Buster Sword, and he's walking back and forth to this new line of infantrymen, and he says, "You will be soldier. You will be my brothers. You will be my comrades." And he repeats Angeal's words, "Prove your honor to me as soldier." And he walks past this one infantryman who has his helmet off, which is Cloud.
Yeah.
He takes Cloud by the back of the head and rests his forehead to his. Now, we then go back to where this all kicks off. Cloud, Zack, and Sephiroth go to Nibelheim, Cloud's hometown, having learned that there's been a Mako reactor that's gone a little bit screwy. One of the guides who leads you there is Tifa, which is one of the main characters in Final Fantasy VII. But Cloud knows he's going back to Nibelheim, and he's like, he knows Tifa is going to be there, and he's like, "Oh shit, no, I can't do it. I told her I was going to be in soldier the next time I'd arrive here, and I'm just an infantryman. I'm going to keep this helmet on."
Oh.
So, Zack and Sephiroth go to this Mako reactor, and Sephiroth says to Cloud, the infantryman who is all gillied up, he says, "This is official soldier business. You stay out here with the guide, with Tifa." Tifa doesn't know Cloud is there. It's brilliant. So Zack and Sephiroth enter this Mako reactor, and they see these canisters with these mutated, decrepit looking monsters, and Zack, after peeking into the spy hole, sees this, and he turns to Sephiroth and he's like, "What the hell has Shinra been doing here?" And Sephiroth is like, "Well, what you see in there are humans who have been exposed to high levels of Mako, just like yourself. Unfortunately, though, they've been mutated, and this is one of Hojo's dirty secrets." And Zack says, "Wait, hang on. What do you mean, like me? You went through the exact same thing, surely?" And Sephiroth is like, "Well, yeah, but I'm not them." And then out of nowhere, Genesis appears. Now, this isn't talked about in the original game. When Sephiroth sees these mutated creatures and puts two and two together, he goes nuts. But in Crisis Core, Genesis appears. He flies in through the window, and he says something like, "Gaze upon your brethren, Sephiroth. Gaze upon them and see the experiments that they were put under, much like ourselves." And Sephiroth is like, "No, don't even. You and I are nothing like these creatures in here." And Genesis says something along the lines of, "We were infused with Genova cells. These were infused with Mako cells. What's the difference? We're all monsters." And Sephiroth is like, "Wait, but my mother's name is Genova." And Zack is like, "Oh God. Oh, no. Sephiroth then kind of leaves that place after sorting out the malfunction and locks himself away in the Shinra mansion, which is in Nibelheim. There's a laboratory underneath where there's a library, and he's learning more about what Genova is, that it wasn't this Cetra or ancient, it was literally an alien life form. But as he's reading this, he's like, why was I lied to? They told me my mother's name was Genova, but she's this monstrosity. Am I no better than those animals locked in those cages? And he locks himself away for about 4 days. Zack and Cloud are staying in an inn in Nibelheim, and Zack is kind of opening up about his life and what Angeal taught him, and he says to Cloud, like, I don't know, man, one of these days I really think you're gonna be in Soldier. You've got the heart for it. And Cloud is like, no, I could never do that. I'd fail at that, like I fail at everything else. I only wanted to impress one person, and I couldn't even do that. I can barely fire this gun. So Zack leaves the inn a few days later, and one of the infantrymen, apart from Cloud, is like, have you seen Sephiroth anywhere? And Zack is like, no, the last time I saw him, he was in the Shinra Manor. I just thought he was going to be there for a day or so, and we'd be leaving. We fixed the malfunction in the reactor, so what's the problem? And the infantryman is like, yeah, you need to go and check this out because there's something wrong with him. And Zack is, okay, I'll go check on him. We're buddies after all. They had been in many places all over Gaia before this. He goes down into the laboratory, and Sephiroth is like, who's there? And Zack is like, it's me. Dude, come on, let's get out of here. We've done what we need to do. And Sephiroth's like, traitor. And Zack is like, what? And Sephiroth says, you're a traitor. Your entire kind are traitors. And Zack is immediately thinking, oh God, Genesis is after putting something into his head. What's this? What's going to happen here? And slowly Sephiroth says that an organism was discovered in a cryogenic stasis called Genova, who could lead the planet into this cosmos, into like this euphoric heavenly state. But your people captured her, and your people kept her under control, and you took her blood and you injected it into all of your friends and made them super. You took my mother's cells for the benefit of your company. And Zack is like, I have no idea what you're talking about. He has no idea about the Project S or Project G thing.
Yeah.
He pushes past Zack and says, get out of my way. I'm going to see my mother. It's kind of similar to how Walter Sullivan treats Room 302 in Silent Hill 4. He sees the apartment as being his mother because he was born there.
Right, okay.
So he sees Genova as being his birth mother because he has her cells.
Yeah.
So it all fucking kicks off. Sephiroth, in that iconic cutscene, sets Nibelheim ablaze.
Yeah.
And all hell breaks loose from there. So Zack tries to stop Sephiroth in the sanctuary where Genova's body is being kept in the Mako reactor. And Sephiroth slices him and kicks him out. Tifa, having learned that her father had just been killed in the fire by Sephiroth, pursues him, but unbeknownst to her, Cloud is following her. She goes in and finds her father being literally cut in two. She takes up her father's sword and runs in after Sephiroth, Sephiroth cuts her down and she falls down beside Zack. And this is where Cloud is like, no, I'm going to make my stand here. I can't lose Tifa. I can't lose her. He runs in.
Okay.
Exactly. He runs in after Sephiroth and impales him from behind. Sephiroth's
Wait, what weapon does he have? Just a normal sword?
The Buster Sword.
Oh shit, Sephiroth got impaled by the Buster Sword?
That's the first time that Cloud ever uses the Buster Sword because Zack had dropped it when he got slashed.
Shit,
So
that's gonna hurt.
Sephiroth doesn't even know what's going on, but he looks down and he sees the blade protruding out from his chest. And there's blood all over the glass where Genova is. And he puts his hand up against the glass and he's like, Mother, I'm here. I'm here. And Cloud sticks the blade further in and says, not only my village, not only my family, not only my friends, you took my dreams away, Sephiroth. And Sephiroth kind of, after Cloud pulls the sword out, Sephiroth is kind of stumbling and he falls into the live stream and he's never heard from again, ever, for a long time. Now, it gets very kind of wibbly wobbly here. So essentially, Zack and Cloud are captured by Hojo and other members of Soldier who have gone to Nibelheim to see what has happened. They haven't heard from Sephiroth in days. They've heard there's been reports of a fire. Zack and Cloud are held by Hojo in these Mako containers for 4 years. Now, Zack can withstand this because he's already been infused with Mako.
Of course.
But Cloud hasn't. He's just an infantryman. And in retrospect, Cloud gets Mako poisoning. So Zack breaks out of the hole that they're in, gets Cloud out. Cloud's clothes are basically melted, and he's looking around this place. It's in the laboratory in the Shinra mansion that I mentioned.
Yeah.
And the only spare clothing there is a soldier first class uniform. And he gives it to Cloud. He said, "Look, put these on. Got to get out of here. Got to get the fuck out of here."
Yep.
I'm just going to skip to the end of the game now. So Zack learns from his inside friends at Shinra that Shinra are now hunting him.
Yeah.
He's been blamed as Sephiroth's killer. And it all comes ahead when Zack and Cloud are on this cliff overlooking Midgar.
Yeah.
And Zack had said to Cloud, now Cloud is kind of in and out of consciousness. He's kind of he's trying to word things, but he's basic. His body has been pumped full of this Mako. He's just in and out, like he's kind of brain dead. And Zack they managed to hitch a ride on the back of this truck from a passerby. And Zack is like, man, you know what I'm gonna do when I get back to Midgar? I'm gonna go see Aerith. Have I ever told you about Aerith? Oh, let me tell you. She has this church. I'm gonna bring you there. You want to see the flowers, but I'm gonna become a mercenary. I don't think I'm gonna get that far in Shinra anymore now that all this has happened. But hey, actually, Cloud, why don't we both become mercenaries? That way we'll always be together. The car gets riddled with bullets. The truck gets riddled with bullets. It's the Shinra soldier infantry.
Yeah.
And Zack takes Cloud and hides him behind this rock formation and takes out his Buster Sword. And he's like, it's only going to go one way. And it's a really cool gameplay mechanic because as you're fighting these waves of enemies, Zack's memories start flashing onto the screen, like when he first met Sephiroth, when he went on missions with Angeal, when he met Cloud, all of this kind of thing. And the last memory that he has is when he met Aerith for the first time after falling in through the roof.
God damn it.
Zack gets overpowered. He's blasted. And he's lying on his back with these multiple bullet wounds. And this other Joe Soap of the infantrymen goes right up to his head and bang. Zack is kind of lying there with the Buster Sword kind of in his arm as the soldiers leave. Cloud crawls out and goes over. He sees this trail of blood and he crawls over and Zack is still breathing miraculously. He's still somewhat alive. And he crawls over to Zack, and Zack grabs the back of his neck like he did earlier and puts his forehead to his, and he says, "You'll live." And Cloud is looking down. His forehead and his hair are drenched with blood. And Zack says, "You'll live. You are now my legacy, my living legacy," mirroring the words that Angeal spoke to him.
God damn it.
And Cloud is like, "I don't know what to do." And Zack is still looking up at him, and he lifts up the Buster Sword and puts it to Cloud's chest and says, "You'll live for the both of us." And Cloud looks down at the Buster Sword and looks at Zack and says, "I am your legacy." And Zack dies with a smile on his face, knowing that he passed his legacy down to Cloud. And that's the end of Crisis Core.
Motherfucker. God damn.
One edition. And it's a beautiful ending scene where you see Cloud literally dragging the Buster Sword into Midgar and becoming mercenary. Becoming a mercenary, like how Zack wanted to become a mercenary.
Yeah.
So that's one of the additions. Now, during all of this happening, there was another edition of Final Fantasy VII called Before Crisis, which was a mobile game, which was only released in Japan, and this follows on more about the Turks, which are the CIA.
Oh yeah, those guys.
Yeah, so you have Rude, Reno, and Sung, who are like the three kind of alphas of the Turks.
Yeah.
During this, you are playing as a member of the Turks, but there's 13 of them this time. They were never seen in the original game because they were sent to different places around Gaia to do missions.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah, whereas this game is more like you can choose whoever you want, and they all have different unique abilities with different code names. So
that's cool.
Yeah, so you have Revolver is one guy who literally uses a revolver. Katana, you have Shoryuken, all these kind of things, you know. Now, I haven't played the game obviously because it wasn't released outside of Japan, but just doing my research, I found this actually pretty amazing in some way. That as the Turks, you were hunting down members of Avalanche, who are the eco warriors in the remake, but in this game they're much more fanatical. They're much more cutthroat in their ways of fighting against Shinra.
Those are the eco terrorists, I suppose.
Yeah, essentially, yeah. What I found was really interesting was, do you remember that part in Final Fantasy VII where the weapons start coming onto the Earth? You have a ruby weapon and...
Yeah.
Right. Oh. Well, there's one part when I think it's Sapphire weapon blows up Shinra HQ, and it's where you think, oh shit, Rufus is after dying in there, but all 13 members of the Turks were in the building at the time, which is why you don't see them.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Okay.
But the game kind of gives them all little individual... It's arguably the same concept as the Organization 13.
I was just about to ask, is it like Organization 13 from Kingdom Hearts?
Pretty much. I mean, it's that kind of thing where they're all quite noticeable. They have different kind of character traits, different hairstyles, that kind of thing. So that's just that happened. I didn't play it. I believe it's being remade and remastered into this new compilation edition. So we've talked about Crisis Core and just what it brought. I mean, the graphical fidelity at the time for a PSP exclusive was bloody fantastic, especially the FMV cutscene.
Oh yeah,
absolutely.
I've seen some clips and it holds up remarkably well visually.
Yeah. What I did appreciate about that was, and this is a point of contention amongst fans, which Dirge of Cerberus is also one of those points of contention amongst fans, is in Crisis Core, right? How you get your kind of overdrive or your, for use of a better word, your special abilities were these slot machines that would have people's faces who you've met in the story. So for example, if you lined up Sephiroth's face 3 times on these slot machines, you would get his special ability. If you lined up shields, you would get Angeal's special ability. It kind of shook up the game's battle style a little bit, that no special feature or special move is going to be the same every time.
Yeah.
And it is a much faster paced game. It's kind of like Kingdom Hearts in the sense it's not really turn based. It's more Kingdom Heartsy, Devil May Cry kind of hack and slash. Uh,
Yeah. Okay.
but there are RPG elements in there, in the sense of you could get new equipment that would give you better health, better spirit stats.
Yeah.
There were Aeons or Idealons that you could unlock. So Ifrit makes an appearance, Shiva, all of these standards.
Wasn't the level up system as well kind of based on that roulette
Yeah,
thing?
which
Yeah.
is a point of contention amongst fans. It could be like, oh, I wanted to upgrade my strength and my endurance, but I landed on this vitality and spirit, and it doesn't
Yeah.
it doesn't help my playthrough or how I want things to go, but it did make you think a little bit different. Like, I didn't land on this, but maybe I could make it work to my benefit.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Which I can understand. I can understand it was a big departure from the turn-based combat system that was polished to a mirror sheen by the original Final Fantasy VII. I do know it is a point of contention amongst fans. So going from the game that you're familiar with, which is Final Fantasy VII, I suppose it's only fair to kind of follow up on the somewhat sequel of Final Fantasy VII, which was released 10 years later in 2006, and it was called Final Fantasy Dirge of Cerberus, which this is where a lot of people had a lot of harsh things to say about Dirge of Cerberus for two main reasons.
Yeah.
The first reason is that you were playing as my personal favorite of the entire Final Fantasy franchise. His name is Vincent Valentine. He's your main character, but the thing is, he's a side character that you can unlock in the original game.
Yeah, he's optional, isn't he? Yeah,
He is
you can
optional.
actually totally miss him.
Yeah. He's in the Shinra mansion in Nibelheim, locked away in a casket.
Yes, like a vampire.
Well, this is it. We will get to how that happened as I talk more about the actual game itself. So this is actually set 3 years later, after Final Fantasy VII and the events that happened. So, as you know,
Yeah.
Cloud and his witty band of mercenaries and friends thwart Sephiroth's mission to send Meteor to the Earth so he can go to where the point of impact was, absorb all the life stream energy, become a god, and purge the Earth. Basically, he wanted to become like what his quote-unquote mother was, purge the Earth, and they'll be the superior race. Now, this is where it kind of gets a little bit messy here, because Dirge of Cerberus kind of jumps back and forth a lot in timelines. So, for a bit of context, 50 years to the prior of Crisis Core, the Shinra Electric Power Company were just called the Shinra Company. They weren't really into Mako exploitation for their electricity as they were in the main franchises. They were like this, they were experimenting with different ways on how to upgrade their weapons and things like that. And one of the original Turks was Vincent Valentine. He was the granddaddy of the Turks, but at this time they weren't the quote-unquote FBI. They were seen as like, they weren't really, how do I describe it? So they were seen as what soldier were.
Okay, so kind of your standard law enforcement and army kind of. Yeah, all right.
Yeah, exactly. This was before soldier was conceptualized.
Right. Okay.
The Turks were seen as like, they dressed very smartly in their suits and very suave and things like that. And Vincent Valentine was one of these Turks. While he, it's brilliant. While he was employed in the Shinra company, he became the assistant to a woman called Lucrezia and a man by the name of Hojo. And they were the scientists of Shinra. The funny thing being that Lucrezia Crescent was Sephiroth's mother. Yeah.
Like
Yeah,
his actual birth mother.
birth mother. Yeah,
And she was injected with Genova cells,
this
wasn't
is
it?
it. This is it. Yeah.
Oh my
So
god.
around this timeline, now you have to remember that the timeline was this is where it kind of started, but canonical wise, Crisis Core is where it started.
Yeah, of course.
Okay, so Lucrezia Crescent had been studying this being along with Hojo. So to put that into context, just going back to the weapons that were in Final Fantasy VII, when the planet becomes in serious danger of being wiped out, or if a big threat is going to happen, these ethereal beings called just the weapons will come and protect the planet and protect it from things that want to wipe it out. Ruby weapon, sapphire weapon, emerald weapon. There was another weapon separated from all this. This was like the last, if this is like the last straw, like the last resort that the planet has, and it was called Omega. And Lucrezia and Hojo were studying Omega. Where did it come from? What is this thing? But they were also studying this other being called Chaos. And Chaos is seen as the platform that will project Omega to the heavens, basically.
Right.
While Vincent was working in Shinra, he became enemies with Hojo because Hojo wanted to use Lucrezia's unborn child in this new experiment that he was thinking of, which was the Genova Experiment. You inject a fetus in utero with these cells. They become born as this super soldier, and then their age is accelerated. And Vincent is all against that. He's like, you would barter your wife's life for the sake of your scientific experiment? What's wrong with you? How dare you do that? It's also worth noting that Vincent and Lucrezia kind of had a thing. He treated her with respect, and he would always kind of stay late in the Shinra company when she was working there, just to make sure she got home safe. Like, he really was a gentleman. So Hojo being like, well, fuck you, you don't know what you're talking about. Killed Vincent. He shot him twice. Yeah, it's mental. Vincent is then put into this container and is being pumped full of these darkness essences from a place. Chaos. Exactly. So during Hojo's and Lucrezia's travels throughout Gaia and the research findings they found from the ancients, they found this one place where this was the birthplace of chaos, and there's darkness energy lingering from chaos in this area. And ironically, it's the place where Lucrezia Crescent would kind of crystallize herself in this place. But I'll get to that in a second. So Hojo kills Vincent, puts him into this container, and is pumping him full of this darkness. And Lucrezia's like, what are you doing? Like, why would you do that? And Hojo was like, do you not think I know about your little affair? Do you not think I know exactly what you two have been getting up to? You wanted to study chaos? We're going to inject him with chaos. And Lucrezia is like, this will kill him. You can't do this. What did he ever do to you? And Hojo masterfully says this line of, he doubted my science and I doubted his humanity. And it's brilliant. It's like, because Hojo in the franchises, he's quite tyrannical. He's science for the sake of science.
Yeah.
Whereas Lucrezia is like, why are you doing this? So Lucrezia at this point is keeping an eye on Vincent, trying to keep him alive, that kind of thing. And it turns out that there was this type of materia that could keep chaos under control. It's a Cetra artifact that was found by Hojo and Lucrezia, and Lucrezia puts the proto-materia into Vincent's chest, which suppresses the chaos.
Nice.
And the only time you actually see Vincent succumbing to this is during his overdrives. where he allows.
Okay. Kind of like Devil Trigger and Devil May Cry.
Essentially, yeah, you could see it that it's the Sparta kind of
Yeah,
thing. You know what I mean?
that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah. So Lucrezia, after doing this to Vincent, did this for a reason, not only because they had this kind of love thing going on, she owed it to him. And what I mean by that is, way before Vincent actually joined the Turks, his father had worked in Shinra along with Lucrezia. Vincent's father's name was Grimoire Valentine, and Grimoire actually died because of Lucrezia.
Oh shit.
They were studying a part of Chaos's dark energy, and it exploded out of a vat. And Grimoire pushed Lucrezia out of the way and took the damage, killing him in the process. So Lucrezia, it's kind of like she says, "Well, I'm kind of the cause for your father's death. I won't let you die."
Yeah.
Kind of thing. But because this is brilliant, because Lucrezia has been injected with Genova cells, she can get these glimpses into the future of. It's brilliant. So in the game itself, because you're jumping back and forwards in present day Vincent to past time Vincent, there's a part where Lucrezia is watching Vincent in this in this vat of chemicals, trying to keep him alive.
Yeah.
And she collapses to the floor holding her stomach. And it flashes forward to Nibelheim when Sephiroth burns the entire place down. And it then goes to when Sephiroth finds Genova, and this is set like 40, 50 years later, or whatever. Yeah. And she's like, what is going on here? So Vincent in the main game is awakened by Cloud in the Shinra mansion. So Dirge of Cerberus takes place 3 years after the events of Final Fantasy VII, where in the original Final Fantasy VII, you actually battle Hojo up on this radio communications tower, I think it is. And
I remember, yeah.
Yeah, Hojo dies, right? And Dirge of Cerberus picks up exactly at that point. So Vincent is down on the bottom looking up at this radio tower, having just killed Hojo. And he's like, I don't fucking believe this guy is dead, the weasel. He runs back up, right? And he sees Hojo slumped over this computer desk. And Vincent in that moment, although he's just killed him, he's staring him down like, you bastard, you ruined my life.
Yeah.
And he takes out his signature trademark triple-barreled revolver called Cerberus and aims down. He says, I'm going to make sure this guy is dead. I do not want him coming back. Right as he does this, though, the emerald weapon that destroyed the Shinra headquarters blows Shinra up, the power company up, knocks Vincent over the railings because of the seismic tremors. And he lands on his back and he's like, God damn it, I missed it. The camera goes all the way back up and Hojo is nowhere to be found.
God fucking damn it. Fucking Hojo.
Right? So there's not that much in terms of the story between Dirge of Cerberus. I'm going to try and skip through this quite quickly. But essentially, there is this splinter group called Deep Ground. So, you know the way the Turks were originally like the FBI, CIA? These guys were like twice that. They were dark as fuck. Like they were really messed up. Like they were really into like interrogation of the darkest forms and all that kind of thing. And with Deep Ground, you had this splinter group called the Sphiets, and there are 5 members of the Sphiets. You have Azul the Cerulean, Rosso the Crimson, Nero the Saber, and Vice the Immaculate, along with Shelk, who is another member. So a lot of other bits and bobs does happen. It's basically Vincent kind of coming to terms with he's still not over Lucrezia because she was the one who got away, essentially. It's basically him hunting down the last members of Deep Ground because they're taking people from other regions of Gaia and killing them. And it's like, well, what's the reason to do with that? Because they want to resurrect Omega.
Yeah.
And the only way you can resurrect Omega or call him to Gaia is to make the planet feel like it's in danger. So while Deep Ground are killing people by the thousands and millions, it's tricking the planet into thinking doomsday is happening.
It's kind of like when you're sick, your body, creates the fever to burn the sickness out of you. So that's kind of like the weapon
Yeah,
is Gaia's fever.
this is it.
Yeah. Oh goddamn.
So that the reason why they want Omega almost in a mirroring concept of Sephiroth is they want to purge the earth, get the immense power of the live stream. They will become gods, and then they fly off somewhere to another planet and repeat the process with Omega as its anchor point. So one by one, almost in that kind of Legacy of Kain vibe we talked about, where Raziel hunts
Yeah.
down his brothers, Vincent hunts down the members of the Sphiets, absorbs their abilities and their strengths, comes face to face with Vice, the Immaculate, which is the leader of this group, but he's dead. And Vincent is like, wait, I didn't kill him. How did this happen? And one of the other members called Nero the Sable, is actually Vice's blood brother. And he said, he's been dead a long time. I don't know why you're here. And Vincent is like, no, this can't be right. I'm supposed to reset everything. I'm supposed to bring balance to life. What's going on here? Immediately, Vice gets up. But, and this blew my mind when I first came across it. So, remember how I said that in the start of the game, you are picking up at that moment when you fight Hojo in the original game?
Yeah.
Remember when you go up to the radio tower and Hojo is slumped over these computers?
Yeah.
Okay, how do I explain this? Hojo was still alive at that point, but he knew his body was dying.
Right.
He had plugged these wires into the back of his head and uploaded his brain and memory to the World Wide Web. And now this was set 3 years previous, you know?
Yeah.
So Hojo had spent 3 years looking for a body to incorporate. But he was like, hang on a second. I remember that there was a group that we told nobody to believe in. And he's like, what were they called again? Oh, yes, Deep Ground. Nobody else in Shinra knew about Deep Ground apart from Hojo and the other higher up members. Not even Rufus Shinra, the vice president and now
Holy
president,
shit.
knew about it. So Hojo ends up hacking into Vice's body. It's kind of like, how do I describe? Do you know like how in The Matrix that Agent Smith jumps out of the Matrix and inhabits that other dude?
Yeah. Yeah.
What's his name? Kane or something like that, or
Yeah.
Bane. That was it. It was Bane. So he got out of a computer, but wasn't able to hijack a human. It's kind of like
Yeah.
this thing. And Vincent sees this. There's this kind of shadow of Hojo right beside Vice, and Hojo was like, "I haven't seen you in 50 years. Welcome back." And Vincent is like, "You bastard! You actually did it. You broke science. It's what you've always wanted to do. You broke
Jesus
science."
Christ.
So they fight, and Vincent becomes the victor. He kicks Vice's body with Hojo inside him into the live stream because a massive kind of hole had been opened up in the earth, along with Nero, who is Vice's brother. The both of them fall into the live
Yeah.
stream. Vincent then returns to where Lucrezia had kind of crystallized herself in this almost saint-like aesthetic. She's still alive, but she's not really alive. And Vincent visits her every now and then just so he talks to her. And like
Oh.
he would say, like in the first edition of Final Fantasy VII, when you unlock Vincent, you can actually go and visit Lucrezia in the original game. And
Right.
Vincent is talking to her, but only he can hear her voice.
Yeah.
And he says to her in the first game, or she asks Vincent in the first game, and my son Sephiroth, is he still alive? Vincent lies to her. He says, no, I killed him.
Oh.
So Vincent is lying to her,
Penny.
you know? So Dirge of Cerberus ends with Vincent saying, I know I have to let you go. And I don't know if I can do that. You kept me alive when I was dead, but I kept you dead while you were alive.
Oh fuck.
Yeah.
That's gruesome.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's this thing that Lucrezia's voice always echoes in Vincent's head in this part.
Yeah.
It happens throughout the cutscenes of Dirge of Cerberus when you're talking to Lucrezia. Vincent's talking to Lucrezia, beg your pardon. And it's very inaudible at the beginning. It's like, and then it gets audible and audible. And the only thing she says is, I'm so sorry. As in, she's sorry. She's sorry that Hojo had killed him. She's sorry Hojo put chaos in him. She's sorry that she killed his father, or was in some way in charge of his father's death, you know. And Vincent at that point is like, I know this is what I have to do. I need to let you go. I need to live for the both of us, but I'm going to live for me first. Kind of like the Cloud and Zack thing, you know?
Yeah, fuck.
So there's a lot to take in there, and I hope I've described it as best I can. Obviously, I've skimmed past so much, but the video could go on for hours if I talked about every nook and cranny. Which brings us to the actual remake, and here's where I'm going to shut up talking for a little while and get your opinions on what you thought of the remake, and if you could let me know. What's about that?
Well, I think it's important to clarify now as well. Obviously, we're not going to deep dive into the whole story of the original game or the remake. They've been, as you said previously, they've been. Everyone knows. Anyone interested knows they've been talked about to hell and back.
Yeah, of course.
So this is just our chance to kind of voice how we felt, how we reacted, what it meant to us, and where we anticipate the Final Fantasy VII franchise is going to go.
Yeah,
going forward. I'd also like to point out that neither of us have really, I don't know if it's out yet, but we haven't played that Final Fantasy VII Intergrade.
No,
that's coming out for the PlayStation 5.
That has to do with it's basically it's kind of like episode Yuffie.
Yeah, essentially. But as far as
she's now she's gone into deep ground to hunt Vice, which is I suppose it's kind of like, wait, hang on, didn't he die in Dirge of Cerberus? Hang on, is Dirge of Cerberus even part of the lore? Is it canonical? Which I suppose that's where a lot of people's confusion came about with this new remake, because it's like, well, where is this going?
Yeah, well, that's it. Because obviously the big thing with the remake is, and obviously like massive spoiler territory. Now, it's spoiler territory for a game that's 20 years old, older than that, but it's also spoilers because the remake went out of its way to subvert expectation. It hits a lot of the same beats of the original Midgard chapter of the original Final Fantasy VII.
Yeah.
You know, Cloud meeting Aerith and Barrett and Tifa and going on their adventures and meeting, you know, Jesse, Wedge, and the other guy whose name I can never remember.
Biggs.
Biggs, that guy. Discount Charlie Sheen in the remake.
Well, this is just a quick diversion there. That little Easter egg for you is that Biggs and Wedge were named after Biggs and Wedge from Star Wars. Biggs, Antilles and Wedge, something or other. But they actually make those two names make an appearance in every single Final Fantasy game. But you're right.
Kind of like Sid.
Exactly.
Awesome. That's cool. I like that.
You're on
man, I didn't even cop the fact that Sid wasn't in the remake, and I'm like, oh, I would have loved to see his super sweary ass show up.
Yeah.
I love Sid. He's an asshole, and I love him. But anyway, so as I said at the beginning of this video, I played the original Final Fantasy VII years after the fact. It doesn't hold the same kind of nostalgic feeling for me as it does a lot of other people.
Yeah.
Which is why, like, a lot of fans are like, what the flying fuck, why did you make these changes? That's not what, you didn't remake my Final Fantasy VII. But then you have fans like you and I that are kind of like, the changes made it exciting. They made it more interesting to us because we knew the plot, we'd seen it before. And the original plot I love. I think it holds up remarkably well, having played it 20 years later.
Yeah.
So yeah, it hits on a lot of similar beats, but throughout, obviously, the remake, there are the Whispers of Fate, as I think that's the name.
Yeah.
And they're like, what are these ghost things? They're weird.
Yeah.
And they keep showing up at key points in the story and essentially keeping the plot on track.
Yes.
Where stuff that, whenever something diverts from the original's plot,
yes,
the Whispers show up and are like, no, you're not doing that. back on track for you.
Yeah.
Back to the plot.
Yeah.
And so you're kind of like, oh, they're a cool addition, but they haven't really done anything to change it. If any stuff changes, and then these guys just change it back. And then it gets to like near the end, and you're in Shinra headquarters, and Sephiroth is like, "Hey, Barrett, fuck you," and kills Barrett. And that in that moment,
when that happened for me, I was like, "No."
Yeah, same.
What?
I was like, they didn't. They couldn't have. Now, technically, that was spoiled a little bit in one of the trailers. But in my head, it was just, there's actually a trailer that shows Sephiroth stabbing Barrett, I believe.
Really?
Yeah, so in my head, it was kind of a fake out in the trailer, like maybe a vision Cloud would have or something like that. You know how they do that? They'll show like a big thing in the trailer, and you're like fucking Rise of Skywalker. They show Rey with the like in dark side form with her twin lightsaber thing, and it's like Rey's gonna succumb to the dark side. Yeah. And it's like, no, actually, she's, she meets a vision of herself for 11 seconds, and that's it. Fuck Rise of Skywalker, by the way. And I like Rey. I like Daisy Ridley in that role, but I hate that movie with a fiery vengeance.
Man, I think what we need to do is I know we talk a lot about gaming going on, but fuck me, being as two Star Wars dorks, we need to discuss this at some point, Yeah,
we do. Yeah. Like and share. Comment, subscribe, tell us if you want us to talk about Star Wars. Everyone's already shit on Rise of Skywalker, but we want to do it too, so let's join in the fun. So it's in the trailer, kind of surprising. Happens in the game, and it's like, no, they fucking didn't. They did not kill Barrett.
Yeah.
Barrett is like the fucking heart and soul of Avalanche. He is the reason that you keep coming back and you keep wanting to do this shit. And he's Marley. It's like, no, Marley's without a dad. No, why would you do this, Sephiroth? You piece of crap.
Well, that's it, isn't it? Like, the reason why Barrett is still kind of holding on to a belief in people is because he owed it to Marlene's father. Like, Barrett isn't her biological father. Barrett was a miner in this place called Coral, and he was the one who said to like his fellow villagers, once Shinra had gotten their eyes on this place, like, oh, if we join Shinra and their power electric company, it'll make mining so much more easier. And then it didn't go that way, and Dyne, D-Y-N-E, I think it's Dyne.
Yeah.
He went mad because of it, and he thinks that he lost Marlene. But I still think it holds like a very human kind of connection with Barrett and his mission. He wants to protect people from this power-thirsty company. But going on what you said, like when I saw that that scene, it all plays out when you're in the Shinra headquarters. Because if you play the original game, President Shinra is going to end up with a katana in his back. It's going to happen. Yep. Like, game over, man. And then Barrett is the one who gets stabbed, and it's like, what? But then the whispers come in, and it's like, nope, we are not going to let this happen.
That's exactly it. So again, they reset the timeline, as it were, and put everything back on track. Now, obviously, there's small diversions because they had to fill out time in some way. Because if it's like, hey, the original Final Fantasy is a lengthy JRPG, and the Midgar portion is only about 5 or 6 hours of that, but we want to make a full 40 to 50 hour action RPG.
I can understand. I can't. Sorry for going across you. I can understand people's discrepancies with that. That it was like, oh, I like it. Like it's great to see these characters again, but not much happens. Like, things really only start kicking off when you get out of the wall marketplace, which is where Don Corneo's mansion is, and it's like, and I can understand this. I can understand. I'm trying to see it from both sides, and I can understand it. That people who are protective over this franchise are like, no, I don't buy it. It's like, yeah, I get that. Okay, I get it. No problem. I can understand where you're coming from. But like, things really only start picking up when you get to the Shinra headquarters, when you're busting Aerith and out of Shinra, and you meet Red 13 and and Rufus comes in and the whole lot. But I don't think that people, they don't, I'm trying to choose my words carefully here. Like, when you get to the end point of the remake and you are literally battling against time, you're in that Nexus arena where Cloud is having these kind of violent flash forwards and flashbacks of, he sees Aerith dying, he sees Red 13 600 years down the timeline, looking over a Midgard that has been run over by nature, and he looks towards Red 13, and Red 13 is looking back at him, and Cloud is like, what am I seeing? And Red 13 is like, what you're seeing is, this is what happens if we fail. And it was in that moment I was like, oh God, hang on, wait, this is a new timeline. They are setting up a new timeline, and I think that is amplified, that instead of Zack dying on that cliff, he brushes himself off in this game, and it's like, God damn, I'm tired.
That was a great way to end that, because
I was like, what?
Yeah, like you're like, wait, what's going to happen? Because a huge part of the original game's plot is, you know, Cloud and his identity crisis taking over Zack's life, like, you know, his kind of fragmented memories and everything. So how is that going to work? Like, are we going to have some sort of confrontation between the two? Is it going to be a case where Zack comes back and Aerith is obviously, like, Aerith is in love with Zack, but
yeah,
so just like, what's going to happen? It's one of those things where it's kind of like taking a fan fiction idea where you get characters to meet that never would have normally met under like standard circumstances, but making it into a legitimate plot point by using, because to be fair, alternate timelines, everyone's about alternate timelines nowadays. It's great. I love that shit. Multiverse theory, all that stuff. So using that to, you know, give us more time with a character like Zack, who before Crisis Core we barely really gotten to know. Seeing how that's going to affect other stuff down the timeline. Is anybody else from Crisis Core going to make an appearance? Because as you said as well, the chapter Yuffie that's being added to Final Fantasy VII looks at deep ground. They're clearly drawing on the expanded Final Fantasy VII universe going forward. It's like a conglomerate of everything that's come before and making something new out of it.
Yeah.
And as a result of that, I'm hyped. Like, whatever comes next, I'm ready for it.
Yeah.
My body is ready, because the fucking gives me now. Because it's, you know, it's we discussed this before, long before this video. I'd heard someone online say the Whispers were the fan base. They represented the fan base wanting to keep the franchise on track.
Yeah.
It's like any changes to the story, the fans would be like, no. So the Whispers would reset it. So at the end, when they fight time and fate and space and Teletubbies, I don't fucking know, they reset time, and essentially the path forward is unknown to both the fans and the characters. So we're in the same place as them at the end of the game.
Yeah.
And it's like a metaphor for the developers breaking free of fan expectations
and constraint.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, oh, we want to do right by the Final Fantasy VII community and do a really solid remake, but we also really want to tell a new story. And in my opinion, it seems like it's the best of both worlds, because as again, it's like a gigantic metaphor. Possibly, I don't know. So maybe someone else read into this too much. I'm reading too much into what they're saying.
No.
But it seems really like that's what they were going for, where they're like, we love you guys and we love this franchise, but let's try something different.
It is a very good metaphor, though, isn't it? It's like, now, here's the thing, right? Like, I'm protective over this franchise because it sculpted me as a musician, and it sculpted me as a gamer. Like, this was one of the first video games I'd ever seen, but I still played Crisis Core. I still watched Advent Children. I still played Dirge of Cerberus, because if this is the story they want to tell, and if I resonate with it, brilliant, fantastic. But I still respect the line that they want to go through. And going back on that metaphor of the Whispers and the Arbiters of Faith could be seen as like the franchise holding on to that. No, we don't want anything to change. But if you're not open to change, you're not accepting like a brand new entry, a brand new story. Like, nobody like, for example, like, you can't reinvent the wheel, but you can add more spokes to it.
Yes, absolutely.
Do you know what I mean?
there's this thing as well of when remakes are announced for anything, films, television shows, video games, they're often met with some kind of derision, some sort of people are like, oh really, I don't want a remake of that. And generally speaking, I can understand why. Like with film, you remake a movie, it's like you better have a damn good reason for remaking it. You better be trying to improve on it in some way, or
You better respect
tell the story. Yeah, respect what came before, but tell the story from a new perspective or something to that effect. Maybe do something that couldn't have been done when it came out originally. Video game remakes are, generally speaking, I think, met with a bit more of a welcome reception, because obviously a lot of the stuff that gets remade is based on kind of like arguably primitive technology compared to now. When they remade the Tomb Raider franchise, it was like, man, that's awesome, we get to know more about Lara Croft, and like with new gameplay and graphics and yada yada yada. Also, why the fuck are they remaking The Last of Us? It's been 8 years. It's still like new. Stop with that shit. If that's true. Anyway, back to my original point. So Final Fantasy VII, it is in a lot of ways dated, mechanically, visually, etc. But the nostalgia obviously kind of keeps it alive, and it exists. The new remake does not take that away. The original game is there for you to play. You can play it on your fucking phone now. Like, you cannot really complain, or if you can, that's, if you want to complain, but you gain nothing by doing that. Whereas you have this original piece of art, and it is art. Fight me. So you can still enjoy that. You can enjoy that on your PlayStation, your Switch, your Xbox, your phone. You could probably enjoy it on your fucking toaster in 10 years. Like, they have Skyrim for fridges now. I'm pretty sure you can, that's a joke. It's on Amazon.
If KFC can make a console, then the world is the oyster,
Play fucking Cyberpunk in your Tesla car.
Which I do,
Oh man, yeah, me and my Tesla. I can afford that.
The thing I want to ask you, Shepard, is we usually kind of go back and forth on where we would like to see the franchise go, or where maybe the franchise could go. The only time on the save point that we couldn't do this was with BioShock. I think, we spoke about the main points and how things might not work in a new edition and whatever. But what I want to ask you is, okay, so the remake part 1 is finished. It's done and dusted. If you don't like it, don't play it. And I can understand people won't play it because they feel a protective stance towards a franchise, a lore. More power to you. I'm not going to hold it against you. Don't play it. That's fine. I'll play it for you, and I will still enjoy it because. But that's it. Like, I respect the lore, the franchise. It's built me up as a musician. It's built me up as a gamer. I will always have that special place in my heart for it. What I want to ask you, though, is, right, we don't know when we're going to be getting the episode 2 or part 2, whatever it's going to be called. So we end in Final Fantasy Remake Part 1, Edition 1, whatever, and we are looking out over this broken highway just after battling the Arbiters of Fate, battling quote-unquote Sephiroth. So what I want to ask you is, where would you direct the actual next edition? Would you include any characters from the past? Or would you have characters now in this remake kind of learning that there's something being done here and being pulled towards something that hasn't been set in time? So let's just say you are now a lead writer for part 2, and Tetsuya Nomura comes down to you and says, okay, need some ideas, hit me with them. It's a massive thing. Now, granted, right? Granted, we haven't been told if Crisis Core is now part of this larger canon, or before Crisis, or even Advent Children. the only consistent kind of canon thing is Dirge of Cerberus in a small part. So I just want to kind of poke your brain a little bit. Where would you run with this?
Well, that's a big question, for like bigger than we've usually dealt with, because of the fact that the road ahead is so unclear and uncharted territory, and in an exciting way. There's two elements to this I want to kind of address. First of all is where I think it will go, and second is where I would like it to go. So where I think it will go is, I don't think it's going to be called Final Fantasy Remake Part 2 or Chapter 2 or whatever. I think they very definitively called the first one Final Fantasy Remake. This is the remake part done. Everything that comes after this, I believe, will be like, it will touch on what came before, but not nearly to the extent that the remake did. I think it will focus on new characters or new interactions with characters we've seen before, but in new situations. Obviously, stuff like Zack is alive. Sephiroth, who knows what's going up with him? You know, is it still going to be him getting the black materia? I don't think so. I think there's going to be Sephiroth is going to be mucking about with time, because he must be aware, because he plays a much bigger part in this than he did in the original Midgar section.
Same with Aerith.
Yeah, exactly. I think, first of all, I don't think you can kill Aerith now. So I think that her heritage as a Cetra descendant, and Sephiroth's desire to not die at the hands of Cloud, I think that's going to cause a new interesting friction going forward. So that's what I think is going to happen. I don't think it's going to be any more remake parts. I think it's going to be original, like Final Fantasy VII, something else, Geneva, I don't know. Where I'd like it to go is kind of down those steps, down those roads of expanding characters maybe we didn't get enough time with. The likes of Jesse, Biggs, and Wedge are alive now, which I don't believe they were in the original game. They didn't survive the destruction of the Sector 7 slums, but they did in this game.
Yeah.
So who knows? Maybe there'll be like a side story of their adventures. We could focus on them in a separate game, even maybe like a Mass Effect style Party of 3 shooter game or something like that. Shooter RPG. Has to be an RPG. And obviously, you know, go along with the original team, get Vincent Valentine in there, get Yuffie in there. But again, expand more on those characters. They were side characters in the original game. So I'd like to see more of them and how this timeline change has affected them. So I would focus on that. I would expand them a lot more. I'd expand the fact that the characters aren't entirely aware of how time has changed and how it's going to affect them and how it's affected the world around them. I'd like to see consequences for this. I want them to, because they changed fate alongside Sephiroth. Sephiroth wanted time changed. They changed time as well. They should pay for it in some way, shape, or form. You know the way a lot of time travel plots, for example, where a character might change time and people are like, time wants to happen. You can drop a river in a stone. Yeah. You can drop I fucked that up. You can drop a stone in a river, but the river continues on around the stone.
Yeah.
So, okay, we managed to completely kill time itself.
Yeah.
So either the consequence is reality starts to fall apart and they have to reset the timeline in some way, which, you know, results in Earth's deaths and yada yada, etc., etc. And it's like, oh man, it's like, oh, you want them not to have that, but they have to do that or end of all reality. Something to that effect. I want to see stakes. I want to see consequences.
Yeah.
And I'd like to see how this affects the wider world of Gaia. Because something the remake I think did very well was, after you blow up the first Shinra reactor, you see the devastation to the outlying city area. You see how the citizens are affected. You see the outcome of your actions. And I want to see more of that going forward. I think that it's important in fleshing out these characters. Aerith in particular, she wasn't there for that destruction at the beginning of the game. So her being with you guys now and seeing, oh God, what are we doing? And maybe even finding out that she has to die in the original timeline. She's like, so me not dying, is that a bad thing?
Mm.
Have I affected time in a bad way because I'm going to live?
Yeah.
I really, it sounds like I want them to be miserable.
No, no.
I kind of want them to be miserable. I basically, I want to see a really character focused, while also being world focused story of these characters and the consequences of their actions. I think it's important when you do something as big as completely rewriting time.
Mm.
It's important to show the fallout, how this affects them. Like, characters are alive that shouldn't be. Characters we love and care about are alive that shouldn't be.
Mm.
And if you want that to emotionally matter, you need to focus on them and expand them further. Like Jesse Biggs Wedge, we need to see more Zack. We need to see how that affects Cloud. Is Cloud currently in this new timeline? Is he still messed up in the head thinking that he is Zack? You know, it's what about when he meets Zack properly? Is that gonna cause him to like mentally implode?
Yeah.
Because it kind of did in the original game when he found
Yeah.
out that his memories were fake. So that's what I want to see. I rambled a lot on that because I'm really passionate about where this is going to go, and I'm so excited to see. I want them to go down this line. Tetsuya Nomura as well. He's known for, obviously, a lot of the Kingdom Hearts stuff can get a bit convoluted, but it always comes back to emotion and like the relationships between characters. And I want to see that. I'm ready for that stuff if that's what he's going down.
Yeah.
What about you? I'd love to
Well,
hear your thoughts.
I mean, I didn't expect a lot of what Final Fantasy VII Remake kind of provided. I was like, what? You know, like having Biggs and Wedge survive. It was like,
Yeah.
Like they're supposed to be dead. You know, that's what kind of pushes Barrett and pushes Cloud to kind of continue on their mission to protect people from big corporations and things like that. Where I would like to see it is if we're going to be focused on this new timeline, is be careful who you add in. Be careful who you add in terms of, don't just throw them in because fans are going to be happy. Fans are going to be unhappy with this no matter what way you put it, because if Zack is going to come back, then surely the other members of the Turks are going to come back who died in the explosion of the Shinra company. But we talked on this privately, and I remember saying to you, if Yuffie is going and exploring deep ground, Vice is going to come back, which also means, like, in the last couple of minutes of the secret ending in Dirge of Cerberus, once you collected all the G entry logs, when Vice is laying dead at the bottom of the live stream, Genesis comes forward and says, "No, we still have work to do."
Oh, shit.
So, are they going to incorporate him? What I would like to see is, I'd like to see more, for use of a better word, like I'd like to see more close contact with the new party here. Red 13, Tifa, Aerith, Barrett, and Cloud.
Yeah.
The original game did touch on that, but I would like it to be that it's not written for the sake of the story, it's written for the sake of the characters. That they are now on this journey. And the original game, in fairness, did touch on this, but go bigger than that, you know? Don't have characters appearing for the sake of fan service or whatever. Other games have done that. Don't insult the player's intelligence. If it's a new timeline, keeping it as a new timeline. Obviously have other nods to what came before. Like, if we're going now that Zack is alive, there could be this whole thing where Zack faces Sephiroth rather than Cloud faces Sephiroth, because they have unfinished history. A lot has happened more so between Zack and Sephiroth than Cloud and Sephiroth, because you could say that Cloud is a mirror image of Sephiroth, and Sephiroth is a mirror image of Cloud. That's what the first game
Yeah.
had written and led us to believe. And it's not that way though. Like, I think the whole antithesis of Final Fantasy VII is it never was Cloud versus Sephiroth ever. It was Aerith versus Genova.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Well, that's why Genova killed Aerith. That's because she was in the way. She was the potential hamper to Genova's plan.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously that's affected now because of this change in time. Is Sephiroth going to direct his energies elsewhere?
Mm.
I before you go on, sorry, that's something else. Like, how does this timeline change affect, say, when these characters meet the likes of Sid or these other characters? Are their lives going to be changed?
Yeah.
Like Sid wanted to build a rocket and go to space, and it didn't work out for him. So, are we going to meet him at a different point in time, and he's essentially a different character?
Did he
Like,
ever go to space?
yeah, maybe something happened since.
Yeah.
Anyway, back to you. Sorry.
No, I mean, like these conversations are important. It's just the way I answer it is having expectations is kind of like the first time we ever saw like a full kind of watchable demo of a Final Fantasy VII remake was way back in 2006. At the end of Crisis Core, you see an E3 demo of just
Yes.
testing out the PlayStation 3's capabilities we're going to see.
Yeah.
And that's why it broke me when it came out for the PlayStation 4. It was like, oh my God, I've waited so long for this. But the way I see it is, on a personal thing, it's like wherever they want to go with this, I will gladly support them. If it's going to be that they may not even include the grander scheme of the Turks or the Sviets, if Zack is literally just pushed aside or whatever, I'll still be like, yeah, I'll check it out. I might not agree with it, but like I'm not gonna bombard forums with don't play this game because it doesn't do this. You know what I mean? It's like I would like to see it that include characters that need to be in there, not for the sake of fans like this, so we have to include Bugenhagen, we have to include Scarlet.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
You want it to matter. You want it to. Any decision that's made needs to be in service of the story.
Correct. Yeah.
And because they already have the gameplay down, so
yeah,
they don't need obviously whatever little expansions may come, because this will obviously be a next gen title.
Mm-hmm.
There'll be enhancements. I think as long as it plays similarly, and they just expand on what came before, because they got it down. I think it works really well. So the focus should now be on where they go with the story, because that was the biggest surprise. That was we got the gameplay and it's like, it's kind of like original Final Fantasy VII meets Kingdom Hearts. It's good and it works and it's fun to play.
Yeah. But you know
the
what
story,
it's like because these games came out on the PlayStation 1, you had 4 discs. When you completed disc 1 and you took it out of the tray, and it's like, oh, I have disc 2 on my hand. Where's it gonna go?
Yeah. That's what it feels like. Yeah, exactly. You don't know what's going to happen next.
Yeah.
And like, you could be the biggest Final Fantasy VII fan in the world, and it's like, man, I don't know what they're going to do. And that's great. I think it's important, because it's when you're playing an expansive open world game like the original, now the game isn't completely open world, obviously there's an overworld after you leave Midgar, and you're like, where am I going next? And you're exploring and you're learning about the world, but it's still, there's an element of linearity to the plot. So this basically being open, I don't want them to do an open world game, because I like the way they structured the plot in this one. I think it's important to kind of keep that going. I'm also sick of open world games. That's just me. Like, they're cool. There's a lot of fun stuff about them, but with a game as heavily story focused as this, I think a more linear approach is better.
Yeah, totally agree.
Resident Evil 4 is one of my favorite games ever, and it's linear as fuck.
But still, it's the progression, and it's characters.
It's well crafted.
Yes.
The experience is like from head to toe built. It's built in such a way that it is engaging and fun throughout. Apart from that last area, that last area of Resident Evil
Ugh,
4 can go fuck itself.
my God.
Um, but anyway, sorry, yeah, back to my original point. This is unknown territory for us in a good way.
Which isn't inherently a bad thing either.
No, it's great.
Yeah.
I'm excited for what's to come, which I
Mm,
haven't been for a game in a long time.
me too.
And I'm not even like I said, I'm only playing these games recently. I've only played Final Fantasy 7, Final Fantasy 10, and Final Fantasy 15 to completion.
Mm-hmm.
I've touched on Final Fantasy 14, which is an online game, and I
Mm.
like it. It's good. I've never played any other ones. Maybe I think I started 8,
Mm-hmm.
but the leveling up system in that game confused
Yeah,
me.
the junction system.
Yeah, that's it. The junction system,
Yeah.
and a lot of people love it because they say it's like, man, early on you can get these crazy cool builds and everything like that. And I'm like, I don't have the head for it right now. I'll play it eventually, but not right now. So
That's a great point.
I'm a casual fan of the franchise, and obviously the thing as well is it's not one overarching story from game to game. Each game is its own sub franchise to an extent, which is why Final Fantasy VII has so many spin-offs and
Mm.
everything like that.
Yeah.
So more, I'm ready for more.
It's something that we actually can't cover wholly in a video, you
Oh
know.
God, no.
But what I'm looking forward to is when the next addition to this new story comes out and we can sink our teeth in and swap ideas about, oh my God, did you remember this? You know?
Yeah.
But what I would like to say is um, thank you so much again for joining me here. It's been fantastic. Really, really appreciate it. And do you have any other points you'd like to make?
Just that I think it's important to stay positive about these things because we don't know what's going to happen, and I think we want to enjoy it. Everyone wants to. We don't want it to be bad, so don't try not to anticipate it being bad.
Mm-hmm.
Try to anticipate with the good that's to come, the excitement that there is to come, the unknown.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's like Resident Evil 8 is out in 2 weeks, and I'm excited to play that because I don't know what the fuck is going on with that, and I like that big AAA companies are starting, some of them, not all of them, but they're shaking things up enough that there is hope for the unexpected to happen. So that's my final note to go on is I think it's important to stay positive and look forward to what's to come.
Yeah.
What about, have you anything you'd like to?
I mean, like what you said there about just like expectation versus reality, it's like you're not going to be happy either way. There's going to be something that might be like, didn't really think that needed to be there, or didn't really think that should have been there. Especially, we talked about this, the whole time concept. When that comes into place, people are just like, ugh, didn't go the way I wanted it to go. And that's fine.
Yeah.
Sometimes it needs to go a way that it was intended to go.
Yes, that's actually something else. You know, that show WandaVision.
Yeah.
Yeah, like that's a big example of fan expectation versus reality. A lot of people were theorizing this character is going to show up, this is going to happen, etc., etc. So there was a lot of hype around it. And when the show ended, people were like, "I hated it because it didn't do what I wanted it to do." And it was a creative show with a cool concept. Enjoy it for what it is, not what you want it to be.
Yeah.
Now, don't get me wrong. Expectations are important because if you don't have expectations, a lot of the time developers might not live up to them. They might not even try. If you look at like EA, for example, they'll just churn shit out to get your money.
Yeah.
Now, again, they've reworked policies or they've given you something more than what you expected. But when, in the grand scheme of things, it's important to expect the best and make the most of what you get. While also don't restrict developers to what you exactly want from a game.
Yeah.
Like Resident Evil 4 as another example. It is not a horror game in a survival horror franchise. It is an action game.
Yeah.
And yet it is one of the best games. To many, it's one of the best games ever made because it is a fun, well-designed experience from beginning to end.
Yeah.
And I think that's important, is like, let them build what they want to build and enjoy it for what it is.
Yeah. I think that's the important thing to take from this video, Shepard, is like, enjoy it for what it is.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be questioned. If you don't like it, you don't like it. don't play it.
And it is also important if you don't like it. Share that. That is important too. Discuss these things, but don't say it's bad because it's not what you wanted.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if it's bad because it's bad, fair dues. If it's badly designed, badly written, if it's an objectively bad game, that's fine. But just because it doesn't go the way you expected, it doesn't mean it's bad. And discuss things. Be nice about it. Like, oh, like there's some stuff I didn't like. Oh, that's cool, man. There's some stuff I did like. Share your opinions, but don't be a dick about it.
Well, this is it, isn't it? I mean,
Yeah.
I just want to thank you, certainly, once again, for joining me on this new edition of the Save Point. So, guys, some absolutely fantastic interactivity going on the videos. And whoever has stayed this long up until this point, major, major love and props to you. So I think we've discussed the franchise of Final Fantasy VII and the wider franchises to the best of our ability, shared some common tropes, some objective tropes, that kind of thing. So what I would like to say is signing off on the Save Point right now. I've been Joker.
And I've been Shepherd.
Have a good one, guys. Thank you so
Thanks so
much.
much.